Hi. Recently, while playing some old Flash games on some very dodgy websites, I found this little game, and I thought, hey, I should make a rip-off version. Take some inspiration and make a mobile game. So, in this video, I'm going to show you the development of this ragdoll dodge type game from the very start. First, I created an empty Unity project, and then I tried to make a ragdoll. And yeah, it didn't go too well. Stuff just kinda exploded. After watching some tutorials on YouTube, I got my ragdoll sorted, and I started working on the movement of the player. At first, I used arrow keys for the controls, because I wanted to see if adding force just to the player's head would work, and it did work. I used the keyboard as the controls because I didn't want to wait for the app to build every time I wanted to playtest it. But then I came across an app called Unity Remote, which is a great app. You plug your phone into your computer, and when you press play on the Unity editor, it just kind of streams what you see on the screen to your phone. So you can just playtest your game straight away on your mobile device, and you don't have to wait like 5 minutes for the app to build. After implementing the controls, I started working on the wave system. I took a simple triangle sprite and scaled it so it looks like a spike. Then I wrote a simple script that just makes the spikes fall and disable the parent joint of the body part it collided with. Currently, when the player got hit by spikes, nothing really happened, so I thought it would be cool to add blood and slow motion. So now, whenever the player gets hit below his knee or below his elbow, the blood particles get spawned in, but if it gets hit in the body, head or upper leg, the game ends and slow motion starts. Then the physics are disabled, and if the player presses space, the game gets reset. At this point in the project, I started getting a little bit demotivated, because the game looked bad and the graphics weren't the most appealing, and I wanted to make it look good. And then I thought, how could I make this look good with minimal efforts? And I remembered, post-processing stack. If you ever want to make your shit game look good, just implement post-processing stack, add bloom, and now you can be really happy because your game looks 10 times better. After messing around with the post-processing stack, I started working on gameplay again. I added a score counter in the background that basically just counts how many spikes have you dodged. I also started working on the mobile controls. The first approach I had was just to make the player's head follow your finger, and that didn't work too well. The player just kept spinning and eventually glitching out, so I scrapped that idea and ended up using a joystick instead. For the joystick, I ended up using this free joystick pack on Unity Asset Store, made by Fenerax Studios. I think that's how you pronounce it. But it's a really good joystick pack. You just drag and drop, and it's very simple to implement into your project. Now that I had good character control, this game was actually fun to play on mobile. To make the game more enjoyable, I thought I should introduce some competition, so I added the high score feature. Basically, it does what you think it should do, just keeps the track of your high score. This really simple feature might seem like little, but it actually keeps the player entertained, because you just want to beat your score, so you keep playing, and I actually fell down this rabbit hole as well. Another thing I added was the walls coming out from the sides. They were working perfectly fine, but after you died a couple of times, suddenly there were just so many of them spawning in, and I couldn't figure out this bug for very long. But after rereading my code loads of times, I found that I have used time.delta time instead of time.time for my timer function. I was pretty annoyed at myself, but I was glad that I found the bug, and it was such an easy fix. The next thing I worked on was the camera zoom effect on player's death. I did this by changing the orthographic size of the camera when the player dies. I got some pretty weird results while testing this feature, but eventually it worked, and I'm pretty surprised how well it looks. It would look even better if the spikes would have some trails. So here's a little time lapse of how I created the trails for my spikes. I didn't use the trail renderer, I just put a simple gradient behind my spike prefab, drop down the alpha a little bit and change the color to red, and I think they look pretty good. I only went with this method because the spikes are only going to be traveling on the y-axis and I didn't want to mess with the trail renderer. At this point I was quite happy how the game looked, so I gave my friends to playtest it, and what I found is that no one could get hang of the controls. So I changed it and I ended up using a dynamic joystick. The difference from the previous controls were that the dynamic joystick follows your finger instead of staying where the first touch was. This seemed to be a lot more intuitive to the player and made the players pick up the controls a lot quicker than it did before. The last thing I wanted to make before finishing this video was the shop UI. I started by trying to learn how to use Unity's scroll rect component, but when I made it work I wasn't fully happy because the squares didn't center themselves. I wanted for the closest square to slowly shift to the middle. I also had to know which square is currently selected so I know which upgrade the player is trying to buy. While writing the script, the most annoying bug was this weird jitter when the square was near the middle. I solved it by using vector.toLerp instead of vector.moveTowards, and that solved the issue. Now the shop is really smooth to use and I know which square is currently selected. If you would like to playtest my game, you can join my Discord server where I'm gonna post the link from which you can access the alpha version of the game on Play Store. Thank you for watching and see you in the next devlog.